Hold on, I'm coming. Not that song. That was Paranoid by Ozzy Osbourne. Welcome back to our daily show, 9:59, as we roll on to the 10 o'clock. You know, if I was on radio, I'd have to say, it's 10 o'clock, RiverBender.com, and I'd throw some weird call sign out that makes no sense, and I'd throw you some numbers like 94.7, the bowl, because I can't say 97, 93. But, I don't have to do that now, so we can just talk to Lacy. 100 years ago,
yes,
milk
and graham crackers.
Okay, where do we start?
Well,
that's excitement right there.
There's nothing more exciting than milk. Okay. So my article this week is about the program that the Alton Public School District did to make sure that kids were getting food in school. So they started this in 1921, but obviously I was writing about 1925 and that year's students and how they did this. So basically, Mrs. Daisy Creswick Rice, who was the health supervisor for the schools, weighed every student. They weighed them 3 times a year.
Oh.
And then...
I don't know if I like this school.
Because so many of them are underweight.
Oh, so it was a different reason.
It was a completely different reason.
This is fascinating.
Completely different. So there's a lot. I'm going to talk a lot about details that were not in the article. So if you're trying to find this in the article, you're not going to see it. But out of 3,787 public school pupils, this is in the 1925, one of the 1925 articles, 2,364 were underweight out of 3,787. So a huge percentage were underweight. And one of the things they emphasized was this was not specifically the poorer students. It was just an issue across the board. Yeah. So one of the ways that they tried to help with this, and there are a lot of things, like after they weighed them, everybody's weight was written on the wall.
Oh, I don't know if that's
right.
Man, the lawsuits would be flying today.
But what they were trying to do,
I get it. It was
make sure that the kids were getting enough nutrition.
This is so fascinating.
Yes. So they weighed them 3 times a year, and then they would send home a colored card, to tell the parents like where the kid fell in the spectrum of things. So I think if they were more than 7% underweight, they got a red card, and if they were normal weight, a white card, and then there was a blue card as well, and it said less than 7% underweight. So maybe if you're just slightly
in between, you were the...
Yeah.
Did you ever get a card for being, not being funny, but did they give you one for being overweight?
Well, you know what? That's what I was thinking that other card was from. And then I just reread the article before I came in here, and it says more than 7% underweight, less than 7% underweight, or normal weight. So I don't know. That must not have been a real...
It wasn't the concern. The concern was just getting kids to be healthy weights.
Yes. Whereas now I think because a lot of cheap food is not nutritionally sound, sometimes we have other problems related to children and health. But in 1925, they were worried about so many children being underweight. Yeah. So they came up with this program to have half pint of milk and 2 graham crackers every morning at 10 a.m., available to all students in all of the elementary school buildings. And it was 4 cents a day if you could afford it. And then it was free for all students that couldn't afford it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the first year that they did it, 1921.
That's interesting, actually. Yeah. Because that's so early. That's well before, the lunch,
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I looked up all that. So the National School Lunch Program was signed into law in 1946. So this is well before that. So in 1921, the Junior Red Cross raised funds by selling Christmas seals to fund this program. And then by 1924...
What are Christmas seals?
I think
for the cards? Okay. Not being funny.
No. That's a really good question, because I think it's related to cards and presents.
That makes sense.
That.
Okay.
And then by 1924, the milk fund was self-sustaining because they had an arrangement where, that's not true. In 1924, it was self-sustaining because in order to charge a full cent, 4 cents But the milk, if you actually divided it up, it was a little less than 4 cents per like milk container or whatever. So the children that could afford it, since they were paying just a tiny bit extra, but again, it would be impossible to pay less than that and still be a whole cent, that covered it for the students that couldn't afford it. And then by 1929, I read about an arrangement that they had with dairies and cracker manufacturers. So for every 4 bottles of milk purchased, a half pint was given for free. And crackers, it was a similar situation. So between those two things, I think they worked out a system where it was self-sustaining. But yeah, it wasn't until 1946, and then later on for breakfast programs in schools, that it was a federal program, and that's still something that we really benefit from today. So in fiscal year 2024, the National School Lunch Program provided more than 4.8 billion lunches to children in the United States. And that's funded by the USDA and implemented in Illinois by the Illinois State Board of Education. So I think that's a very, 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 very wonderful thing. I mean, they talk about in here, and I know that teachers know this now and see this now, but students are going to do a whole lot better in school if they're not hungry.
Yeah.
They can focus.
100%. Well, and it's so fascinating to me that it's just, like now the conversation is on, how unhealthy our children are, like collectively speaking, not saying you and I are, but, back then it was our kids are still unhealthy, but in a different way because they aren't getting the proper nutrients because no one really understands. And they didn't have the money, I'm sure. That's part of it. But no one really understood the food pyramid then either,
I think that it was probably a whole bunch of different factors that we don't quite, can't quite fathom as somebody in 2025. But I think in general, kids were not getting enough food. Yeah. They weren't getting enough nutrients. So...
Makes sense to it. I mean, it's just very fascinating. That's how far, that's how much the seesaw's teetered back, if that makes sense, to where it was an underweight issue. And now it's like we have a lot of children that are, are overweight, and there's a lot of other, it's not a malnutrition thing anymore,
It's a different issue.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's the same thing because they're still needing healthy lunches, and it shouldn't be a Cisco chicken patty. But it's just, it's wild to me that it was just it was the same issue.
Yes.
But in a whole different, if you just flip the coin over.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's what
I meant by that.
Yeah. And I think that activity is probably a big part of that too.
Totally.
The kids were part of the reason that the kids they were working really hard. They were, that makes so much sense to me now. Now that you say that, it does make sense to why, especially because I don't know what type of, labor the children were doing in 1925, but it's not pretty much, it's not easy work, I'm guessing. I'm sure you're working hard. Well, and that brings up, I don't know when children had to start going to school legally.
Oh.
Because I know in the early 1900s, we had kids working in the glass factory overnight. So I don't know if those were
See you later, Mom. I'm pulling a double.
Yeah, the same kids that were then going to school the next morning, or if that was earlier, or if those kids are completely taken out of the equation because they weren't at school. I would have to do more research about what childhood looked like in this specific time period to figure out if all the kids in Alton that were this age had to be in school or not. But you're right. We've always needed to look critically at children and nutrition just in different ways.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. It is so fascinating because we have Shelley Wallner who comes on. She's a huge advocate for healthy lunches in schools. Bunker Hill is going out of this world. She brought me in these blueberry muffins that you would have thought were from the Hilton.
Ooh.
And just incredible. She goes in lobbies in Washington and does a lot
for healthy lunches. Yeah. That's amazing.
And so actually she just texted me a couple days ago. I got to get back to her and get her on next week. But
good.
She's been on a few times. She does wonderful work. But it's just, like I said, there could be 8,000 reasons as to why this is the case. And no one's going to be able to pinpoint it on one. It's just like you said, going back into it and seeing just the evolution of this same issue is just fascinating.
Well, and also something that and I don't know how they did this with the kids that could afford it and the kids that couldn't, but in the Alton Public School District, everybody gets free lunch. Everybody gets free lunch and free breakfast. And I really appreciate that. I know that's because so much of the area is low income, but I really appreciate that because then my kids don't know who would get a free or reduced lunch versus who could afford to pay. Yeah. It's just free for everyone. And so it really takes away any sort of shame that would be associated with your financial situation.
And I think it's still, because you can still get add-ons, while you're in the lunch line, if that's what you prefer. If I remember.
Well, I don't think in elementary school.
Oh, you can't? At Alton High, you can still get like cookies and
Alton
stuff.
High is a different situation.
You can still get other things, but you're still never going to, that base lunch is free.
Yeah. And then I think in the elementary schools, and I don't know about the middle school, but in elementary schools, it's just, there are choices. But it's one lunch and you get the lunch and there's not an add-on.
This is fascinating.
Yeah.
What else did you, not to cut you, what else did you learn about this?
What else did I learn? I think that we don't always realize how, it's like you learn a little bit about history and you think one thing and then you learn more and it sort of changes your perspective. So like, I know enough about this time period that I'm like, okay, a lot of the time married women didn't have jobs outside the home. And then I read about somebody like Mrs. Daisy Creswick Rice, the health supervisor for all the schools. And I'm like, okay, Daisy, I want to learn more about you because clearly like this was a really educated, powerful woman at the time who's married because it says Mrs. Daisy Creswick Rice. So it kind of, like generally a lot of women didn't have positions like this. But when you find somebody that did, it's like you're almost expecting it to not be a woman in charge of something like this. And so, so it makes me want to learn more about her and what she was working on. And I know she did it for a number of years because she was in charge in 1929 when I was looking at the later versions of this as well. And I don't know what happened when they went into to the Great Depression and everything. I mean, this is clearly just the 20s, but I don't know. I like not just that they were talking about the kids needing to be nutritionally supplemented, but that she very specifically said, this is not just an issue for the poorer kids. Like this is an issue across the board. And that she talked about it, not just being a health issue, but it being something about kids being able to focus and the teachers seeing the specific effects from it, because it's exactly what we know now. Yeah. But I like it when people are very clear about all the different aspects of it. I mean, she was really thinking about all these things.
Well, and honestly, Lacy, it's just one where I'm glad we're talking about it today because it's one that, like we talked about earlier, it's the same issue. It's just the evolution of that issue over time. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. We need to feed children so they can learn and so that they can be healthy. Well, I'll tell you when Shelly comes on the show. Okay. Yeah. I'll watch that. We'll take a quick, thanks you always for stopping by. You're welcome. And we'll see you, Lacy, again next week. First Wednesday of November. Yes. We're here. All right. There we go. All righty. Dawn Michelle takes over my show next.